All right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Shakwa, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on supporting English learners with the Tools for Teachers website, brought to you by the California Department of Education. So this webinar is the first in a series of Tools for Teachers shared practices webinars that will be occurring throughout this school year. And we'll share a little bit more info about some of those upcoming webinars at the end of today's presentation. And before we hand it off to our great presenters, I just wanted to address a few housekeeping items. So first, all participants are automatically muted today, and the chat is turned off except for some links that we'll be sharing there. We will be collecting questions through the Q&A feature in Zoom, so please submit any questions that you might have there, and we'll cover some of them towards the end of the presentation. We'll do our best to get all of those answered. A copy of today's slides is available on our upcoming training opportunities webpage on CAASPP.org and ELPAC.org, and we'll also be putting a direct link to those slides in the chat as well shortly here. We also will be recording today's presentation, and that archive of the presentation will be available to watch on our CAASPP and ELPAC YouTube page and on the CAASPP.org and ELPAC.org training opportunities pages. It usually takes 1 or 2 weeks after the meeting for that recording to be available, so keep an eye out for that. And with that, I think we'll pass it over to our presenters for today. So please give a warm welcome to Tammy Saldana, Carla Nahara-Kunzmiller, and Matthew Cowan.
Thank you, Tyler. My name is Tammy Saldana. I am an education programs consultant with the California Department of Education. With me, I have a California teacher that I will introduce later who will share his practices with Tools for Teachers. And I also have my colleague, Carla, who I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carla Nahara-Kunzmiller, and I'm also a consultant in the assessment division at the California Department of Education. So today we're excited to share with you a resource that's available from the CDE to support teachers in planning and implementing instruction. Here's the agenda for today. First, we'll show you a short video and a quick demonstration of the Tools for Teachers website. This site features an advanced suite of resources that focus on implementing the formative assessment process in the classroom. The resources include embedded instructional differentiation with formative assessment and accessibility strategies. Then we'll walk you through an example of a teacher using Tools for Teachers with the English Language Development Standards, or ELD standards, to meet the needs of English learners. We also have a guest teacher who's going to share how he uses Tools for Teachers in his classroom, and then we'll share various resource links that you might find helpful. And lastly, we'll finish up with a bit of time for questions and answers.
Now, because this is the first in a webinar series about Tools for Teachers, we're going to take a little bit of time to give you a background of how Tools for Teachers is available, as well as the resources and the website Tools for Teachers. So we'll take a few minutes and go through that and show you a demo of Tools for Teachers, and then we'll get into the English learner part of it. So let's start with how Tools for Teachers is available for California educators. So the state of California is enrolled in the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. And as a member of that consortium, we are provided with a comprehensive assessment system. And there's 3 components or parts of that assessment system. There is the summative assessments, the interim assessments, and the formative assessments. And when we think of the school year, we think of those summative assessments for students. They take that end of the year test in the spring. It's a one-time deal usually where they're taking that end of the year test. The interim assessments are quick checks for understanding, little learning checks throughout the school year. And the formative assessments are something that are used on a daily basis. When considering teachers, we think about how the vast majority of their time is spent on daily formative assessments, and this is where Tools for Teachers comes into play. When we talk about formative assessments, we are talking about a planned, deliberate process that is used during instruction by both teachers and students. And the goal is to use evidence of student learning to adjust teaching and learning strategies so that students increase their understanding of the content and students are supported so that they can become self-directed learners. So in my own words, formative assessment is when teachers are quickly checking where students are at and then providing in the moment guidance based on student need. So when we talk about smarter, balanced formative assessment resources, you may have heard of the digital library. Back in 2014, the digital library was a website that had resources for teachers. And over the years, we've received feedback from California educators and educators throughout the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. And about 3 years ago, we came together and we started taking a look at our needs and creating a new website for formative assessment resources. And that's when Tools for Teachers was created. And about a year ago, in September 2020, Tools for Teachers made its grand opening. And now Tools for Teachers serves as that formative assessment component of the assessment system. CDE staff, including me, and California educators in the State Network of Educators group have worked with educators across the Smarter Balanced Consortium to develop lesson plans, which we interchange lesson plans with instructional resources. These are plans that have classroom activities and the lesson plans. And we create these for Tools for Teachers, and we continue to create them. They're an ongoing process that we're always filling Tools for Teachers with resources.
So before Tammy gives us an overall demonstration of the Tools for Teachers website, we're going to watch a quick 4-minute video that will show you how Tools for Teachers supports educators.
Tools for Teachers, the home for smarter balanced instructional supports, was developed in close partnership with classroom teachers. Tools for Teachers activities and lessons are created, reviewed, and approved by educators to ensure they reflect the realities of teaching today. How does Tools for Teachers support teaching and learning? It helps busy teachers save time planning great lessons.
The lessons in Tools for Teachers are vetted. I'm going to a place where I know these educators have worked very hard and created these vetted lessons that really speak to the needs of my students. It is a huge time saver, huge time saver.
Just the fact that you have one, like a central shop, and that they don't have to be just searching all over the place, that is aligned, is standards-based, so you're not just getting information just from random people, but people who are actually professionals just like you are.
Tools for Teachers supports differentiating lessons for students.
So you have resources differentiated, but are also designed with universal design for learning in mind, so that it's one lesson.
Sorry, folks, not sure why it's stopping here.
That is easily accessible for all students, and it has built-in choices. It's got built-in options. And differentiation really means providing access and equity to students, not giving all students the same thing, but making sure that students have access to what they need, whatever that might be.
Every resource is written with the at grade level or at standard learner in mind, and then differentiation strategies are included within the lesson for how you might differentiate for students that need more support and for students that need a little bit more of a challenge or that might be a little bit ready to move beyond the content.
Embedded in every resource are strategies for teachers to use to check student understanding and to identify and act on learning opportunities in real time.
Formative assessment strategy for me is knowing how to engage my kids in the learning, as well as knowing where they might be having some disconnect within the content or with just in the process of their learning. And this formative assessment strategy is just a quick and easy way for me to know where they're at and where I need to take them next.
And a big part for me is self-efficacy, so students responding to their learning, what they know, what they don't know, and that embedded strategy be really quick for them to see where they're at and then for me to act on it and help them feel good about the learning process.
Tools for Teachers helps educators support students with diverse accessibility needs.
The feature that I'm most excited about is the accessibility tools and that are embedded within every resource within Tools for Teachers. Accessibility tools and resources are strategies that are just-in-time opportunities for teachers to learn about how do you make instruction accessible to students.
As a special educator, the accessibility strategies are the backbone of Tools for Teachers. It actually reaches the margins of the classroom. Making content accessible to every student that's sitting in my classroom is really the most important part of my job. That's one of the most salient parts of Tools for Teachers because it's thought out ahead of time.
Tools for Teachers puts resources at the fingertips of educators so they can focus on what's really important, helping prepare today's students for tomorrow.
Some of the life skills that I've learned that the Smarter Balance system kind of promotes is that we're teaching the kids strategies for college and career readiness. When we're looking at it in the 21st century, we're currently preparing our students for jobs that don't even exist.
I'm excited that kids are going to get what they need. I'm excited that teachers are going to be able to provide kids with what they need using Smarter Balance, Tools for Teachers, the interim assessments, all of those things together make for successful kids.
Ready to unlock Tools for Teachers? Visit smartertoolsforteachers.org for more information.
So with a little bit of background of Tools for Teachers, let's jump into our demo so I can show you what types of resources are in the website. There are 3 ways to get into Tools for Teachers. I can type in the URL or I can go to CAASPP.org. I'm going to share my screen with you today and I'm going to use ELPAC.org. And here on the ELPAC.org website, I can select Tools for Teachers and other formative assessment resources. When I select that link, I'm going to be taken to a page that has some training videos, flyers, and additional resources about formative assessment, as well as a link to the Tools for Teachers website. Now, it's important to note that Tools for Teachers is available publicly without login to a degree. I'm going to show you the public access before I log in. On the landing page is an icon that says Tools for Teachers, and underneath it says Smarter Balance. When I log in, it will say California, and I'll explain that more. The public user can do a keyword search or use filters and see full resources, 2 full resources, a mathematics resource and an English language arts resource without having to log in. And there are 2 professional learning videos about Tools for Teachers and about the formative assessment process. So that's the public user access. And along the left side, throughout Tools for Teachers website, is this dark gray bar that expands when the cursor goes near it. There is the Tools for Teachers icon that takes the user to the landing page at any time. There's the keyword search, as well as links to key features within Tools for Teachers. The first icon here is the Interim Connections playlist. And what these are groups of instructional resources. We also call them lesson plans. We interchange instructional resources with lesson plans. These are lesson plans that are linked to the interim assessment blocks. We call them IABs. So these are lesson plans that are linked to the interim assessments. There's also a link to the landing page of all instructional resources, the formative assessment strategies and accessibility strategies, which I will show you, and a link to the landing page for the professional learning resources, and a link to the interim assessment item portal. Now, when an administrator gives a teacher access to interim assessments, they assign that through a TOMS user role. TOMS is the Test Operation Management System. And the TOMS user role provides teachers access to administer interim assessments, which are secure items. So if a teacher has that access, they can go into the link here in Tools for Teachers to see actual interim assessment items. And at the bottom left-hand corner is always the login icon. So when I talk about logging in, you can log in here, or I'll show you another way to log in. So I'm still in public user access. I am going to I can do a keyword search, or I can use a filter. So I'm going to use a filter, and it takes me to a list of filters that I can use to find resources. I can use a filter for the type of resource. There are instructional resources or lesson plans. The connections playlist, which are groups of resources linked to the interim assessments. There are professional learning resources, and there are links to the formative assessment and accessibility strategies. I can also filter by grade level, subject area, claims, targets, and standards. For today, I'm going to do a keyword search. I'm going to type in vocabulary. And the system is going to look for resources that use the keyword vocabulary. The system has returned 92 resources. I can scroll through. I can see the type of resource in the gray font here. There are interim connections playlists, and there are instructional resources. I can see the title that is linked. I can see the grade level, the subject area, as well as a short summary of what each resource is about. I can also see at the very bottom the claim, target, and standard that are covered in the resource. I will select an instructional resource called Brief Write Transition Words. I'm still a public user. I can see the resource. I can go into it and see the structure is always the same in each resource. On the left-hand side, I have an outline of the resource with links to the sections of the resource. In the middle of the screen, I have the actual content of the resource with the step-by-step directions. And on the right-hand side, I can see the subject area, the grade level, claim, targets, and standards, some links, and a list of the playlists that include this lesson plan. So I can see in the bulk of the lesson here in the middle, I can see the Get Started section. I can see an overview or a summary and the learning goal and success criteria. And this is where the user who is a public user needs to log in. And I can either log in selecting the link here on the screen or down in the corner. And this is where my logo is going to change from Tools for Teachers Smarter Balance to Tools for Teachers California. And what is exciting about this is that California has its own version of Tools for Teachers. And in the California version, we were able to add some science resources. California teachers have access to kindergarten through 5th grade science resources, along with the English, language arts, and mathematics K through high school resources. So most users are going to log in using their TOMS user role access given by their administrator. Now, if a teacher in a California LEA does not have a TOMS user role yet, they can register here and select the Register for Tools for Teachers and use their district email to gain access. The first time a user logs in, they'll get a code that comes within 5 minutes to their district email, and then they can get in. So after I've logged in, I can check my logo and it says Tools for Teachers California. Now I can see my full step-by-step. I can see purple links in here. These purple links indicate the strategies that I was talking about, formative assessment and accessibility strategies. Formative assessment strategies are indicated by a clover. A formative assessment strategy is recommended ways for teachers to quickly check where students are at. There's also the accessibility strategies that are indicated by the silhouette of a person. These are recommended ways for teachers to provide access for all students. It's important to note that these formative assessment and accessibility strategies, along with the focus of the whole formative assessment process, are key to supporting English learners during instruction, which we will dive deeper into later on in this session. Now, below the step-by-step, we have attachments. These are handouts, videos, or any other things that help to implement this lesson. We have a list of the accessibility strategies that are used, a things to consider section, and a description of how the formative assessment process is used in this particular resource. I'm going to go over to the playlist group. This particular lesson is used in 3 playlists. I'm going to select one of them, the revisions playlist. Now, the title of the playlist is the exact same title of an interim assessment block. So a teacher can select the link to view interim assessment items. These are to view the actual questions of the interim assessments. And you can see the links to the lessons that help to assess and will help to learn the topics that are assessed by an interim assessment block. Every playlist has a list of topics that the interim assessment block assesses, and you'll see the links. Sometimes you'll see future resource as we build out these resources. And along the right, you'll see student performance progressions. These are quick descriptions of how students perform as they learn these topics. The connections playlists also have sections for suggestions for intervention and things to consider. There's also an IAB background, and academic vocabulary is a good place for recommended words that teachers can use during instruction. Teachers can use their formative assessment strategies to provide support so that students know and understand how to answer the interim assessment items. There's links to Smarter Balanced sample items, the Content Explorer, a video about interim assessments, a flyer, and a way to describe how to access interim assessments. So that is a quick demo of the Tools for Teachers website.
All right, thank you for your demonstration, Tammy. So now is the time to ask the big question. How do the resources in Tools for Teachers help teachers meet the needs of English learners? Now, Tammy is going to give us an example of a teacher using Tools for Teacher for this purpose.
I'll give you an example of a 3rd grade teacher. She's thinking of her students, and she notices that she has a group of English learners that need additional support in vocabulary. Now, she's determined this either by using formative assessment strategies and observing the need for vocabulary instructional support, or maybe she's administered a Smarter Balanced interim assessment block and noticed the needs of her students when she was viewing the responses and the results in the California Educator Reporting System. Either way, she knows that her students need some vocabulary instruction support. So the teacher uses 3 resources that are available to her to carefully decide instructional next steps. She can use the ELD standards, the framework, and Tools for Teachers. Carla will describe how the ELD standards and framework help to support this teacher and her English learner student needs.
Thanks, Tammy. The ELD standards amplify the English language arts or ELA standards and other content standards. The California ELD standards are built on 3 critical concepts. The first is that English learners need a purpose for using language, because we know that using language is a social function. Students are taught to use English for describing, explaining, persuading, and much more. The second premise is that English learners need to know how to use the language meaningfully in different settings. Students acquire this by engaging in experiences where they collaborate with others, learn how to interpret meaning, and are taught to produce meaningful messages. And the third premise is that English learners need to know how to access the resources to be knowledgeable about language in order to be precise in language use to convey exact meaning. Students acquire knowledge of language that assists them in structuring cohesive texts, expanding and enriching ideas, and combining and condensing ideas. So we know that the English language development standards and framework are designed to support English learners in achieving the same English language arts and literacy standards as their English-only counterparts in the classroom. So let's dive deeper into what our third grade teacher reads about vocabulary instruction. This teacher is looking through the standards and framework and comes across these two quotes about how important it is to explicitly plan vocabulary instruction. Research indicates that there are large vocabulary differences among English users by the end of grade 2, differences that account for the ability to comprehend grade level texts in the years ahead. Early attention to vocabulary, therefore, is crucial. The second quote is, teachers should provide multiple and repeated opportunities for English learners to hear, read, and use general academic and domain-specific vocabulary in meaningful context. Now remember, the third grade teacher is looking for ideas on providing support for her English learners. Now she reads a quote about scaffolding. Teachers provide carefully designed instruction and appropriate levels of scaffolding to support meaning making with these texts. Now, the ELD standards establish 3 levels of scaffolding that teachers can provide to English learner students during instruction: substantial, moderate, and light. Tammy will show you how the teacher will find that this planned scaffolding is incorporated into every Tools for Teachers instructional resource through the step-by-step structure, the formative assessment strategies, accessibility strategies, and formative assessment process detailed throughout all of the lesson plans. Now, she'll also show us a resource that implements the recommended activities stated in the third grade ELD standards, such as listening actively to spoken English, verbally exchanging information and ideas with others, using writing to express information and apply precise vocabulary. The third grade teacher's goal is to hear students use learned vocabulary throughout the day in multiple situations. The teacher's planning to structure frequent conversations so students can use the targeted vocabulary words meaningfully and discuss the text they are reading, and have opportunities to practice using the language throughout the day and in different settings with their peers. All right, back over to you, Tammy.
Thank you, Carla, for giving us a background on what's recommended for teachers regarding English learners. I'm excited to share with you an example of a resource a third grade teacher could use with her students to support vocabulary planning. I'm going to share my screen with you. And we are looking at an instructional resource that the teacher can find by using filters or keywords. In fact, our teacher today is going to share how he uses the filters and keywords to find resources for his English learners. This particular resource, Word Choice Exchange Using Context Clues, is a third grade resource. In this third grade lesson about learning Tier 2 vocabulary words, by the way, Tier 2 vocabulary words are a little more difficult to learn than the common sight words that are Tier 1. This lesson uses mentor texts that are provided in the attachment section. First, let's look at scaffolding. Carla mentioned that the ELD framework recommends that teachers use carefully planned scaffolding. They start with providing substantial support to students at first, and then transitioning to moderate support, and then providing light support and eventually individual, independent work. In this lesson, the teacher provides all three levels of support. First, she provides substantial support when she uses the read aloud formative assessment strategy and the think aloud strategy to model the thought process used by students while doing the activity. The teacher also provides moderate support as she has students work in teams to use the highlighter, as well as to use peer-to-peer feedback. And the teacher also provides moderate support by using bilingual dictionaries for students to use in finding words that they may not understand. And then light support is provided as students work individually with a partner or a small group to provide their own writing using vocabulary words. The purple links with the silhouette of the icon are the silhouette of a person are the accessibility strategies. These strategies are important when considering English learners. They're not just used for special education students because they are providing access for all students. The teacher can use these suggested strategies to make sure that students have full access and understanding of the content and the tasks. This particular lesson uses the highlighter strategy, bilingual dictionary, English dictionary, and read aloud accessibility strategies. And there are also formative assessment strategies indicated by the purple clover. In this lesson, the teacher uses notice wonder strategy, peer-to-peer feedback, think aloud, and anchor chart to see student learning evidence and decide where she can provide support. English learners can especially benefit from being able to verbally exchange ideas and information during the peer-to-peer feedback discussion. And the anchor chart in this lesson provides a place for students to sketch word meanings and for the vocabulary words, which helps the students to visualize the word meanings. And remember when Carla said that the teacher's goal is to have students using the vocabulary on their own? This lesson has students discussing ideas and information with their peers, looking up definitions and sketching the words, writing new texts using the vocabulary words embedded, then sharing their own writing with their peers as they are working, and the teacher is sharing student examples. Then the teacher closes the lesson with the students writing one accomplishment they feel after they finish the activities. Like all of the instructional resources in Tools for Teachers, these lessons are have many other ideas for the teachers, including ways to differentiate instruction, monitor learning, gather learning evidence, and provide additional support. As mentioned in the video earlier, these lessons are carefully authored at grade level with the goal of universal design for learning in a format that considers the diverse student needs that may be in the classroom. These resources are written by teachers for teachers. While considering the needs for English learners, in some of these lessons, you will see English learners specifically called out with ideas. In other lessons, it is not explicitly called out. However, the formative assessment process focus of these lessons, the scaffolding, the formative assessment strategies, accessibility strategies, things to consider section, and instructional move sections of these resources are all good places for teachers to find recommendations for meeting diverse student needs. It's important for teachers to consult the ELD standards and frameworks in considering English learner needs so that teachers can know what types of resources and lessons to look for in Tools for Teachers. And now, for the best part of our presentation today, I have the pleasure to introduce Matthew Cowan. Matt is a California classroom teacher who has been very active in helping to develop the instructional resources available in Tools for Teachers. In fact, today he plans to share with us not only an instructional resource from the website, but also a video of him teaching in the classroom. Now I will turn it over to Matt. Take it away, Matt.
Thank you so much, Tammy and Carla and Tyler. I feel very blessed to be here today, and I appreciate everyone who's joining us. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Matthew Cowan, and I currently teach ELD, English Language Development, as well as English Language Arts, grade 10 and 11 at the School of Arts and Enterprise in Pomona, California, in Southern California. It is a small public universally accessible arts magnet school, and we do serve an underserved population, but we are universally accessible. I started my teaching adventure just over a decade ago, so I'm now 11 years in, as a reading intervention teacher in South Los Angeles in 2009. As of last year, I now have the distinction of teaching in some capacity all secondary language arts courses from grades 6 to 12. I've worked in all kinds of districts, from urban to suburban to somewhere in between. The school that I'm currently at has 700 students. We are currently on the smaller side. 26% of our student population are currently English learners. And additionally, 87% of our student population is free and reduced lunch as well. I became affiliated with Tools for Teachers way back when it was the digital library in 2014. I went to a breakout session at a conference I attended on the digital library, and from there, here I am 7 years later, still going strong. When I heard that the concept of Tools for Teachers was essentially teachers helping other teachers with high quality and engaging formative assessment resources, I knew that I had to get involved. When the digital library was ultimately retired last year, I was honored to continue doing this amazing work, continuing with Tools for Teachers. As of now, I've participated in over a dozen Tools for Teachers workshops, where I've collaborated with educators in the consortium from all across the country. As we've continued to come together virtually since the onset of COVID, it's become even more apparent now than ever the passion and energy that teachers are coming to the table with during these workshops. As cliche as it absolutely does sound, Tools for Teachers is about using the village mentality of scaffolding and implementing support for educators, honestly, just like we do for our students day in and day out. Tools for Teachers is really about walking the walk. What makes this such an amazing resource and endeavor is that my instructional craft and flexibility has grown exponentially. I owe that to the supremely collaborative nature of working with Tools for Teachers. These are resources. The resources here are created for the claims, the targets, and the standards, and they are vetted through many rigorous rounds of robust reviews that screen for quality criteria. Additionally, in my capacity with Tools for Teachers, I've been a resource author, a formative assessment coach, and a conference table lead. I'm absolutely thrilled to share my experiences using Tools for Teachers to augment and scaffold instruction for my English learner population. So every single summer, after the long days come to the close and the beaches are done, before I start planning my instruction, I immediately go to Tools for Teachers to start backwards planning, especially in terms of instruction for my English learners. Tools for Teachers hits the 4 tent poles or domains of instruction, which are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I search for instructional resources by utilizing the target, claim, standard, and formative assessment strategy filters. All of the resources are differentiated with English learners in mind. The differentiation is explicitly called out within the step-by-step of the resource, which really makes for ease of teacher use. Additionally, the connections playlists are amazing for culling and archiving resources that are geared for one specific target or groups of targets. For example, for speaking and listening, I often travel to that particular playlist for the grade level that I need. I know that I'm going to find high quality instructional resources that support the skills that I need supported for students. The IABs or the interim assessment blocks go extremely well with Tools for Teachers resources. Again, while all of the resources in Tools for Teachers are vetted, rigorous, and engaging, I am specifically partial to the speaking and listening resources in supporting my English learners. Many of these resources come with student-friendly directions, rubrics, and modifications that make the stratification of instruction, especially on the fly, a much more manageable task for teachers. Now, I would love the humble honor of sharing with you one of the instructional resources that I helped create while I was a teacher on special assignment in the Redlands Unified School District. This is a resource that engages students in the speaking and listening process, and it is called the Digital Hybrid Socratic Seminar. This is just one example of a multitude of resources in Tools for Teachers that hit many of the same similar targets with English learners. So the Digital Hybrid Socratic Seminar, this resource aims to make rigorous speaking and listening exercises accessible to all English learners and our students by providing the appropriate scaffolds to lift students where necessary, to lift students up where necessary. Great care was taken to use a class. So the class that you are going to see was a real cross-section representation of the school population. Oftentimes, when we see videos that are presented of strategies, they are of all honors classes, which can leave the teacher wondering oftentimes if the materials and resources that are on display will work in the real world or in the real classroom rather than just in theory. The students in the video you are about to see were members of a college prep sheltered 9th grade English class. 25% of the class was comprised of English learners. I wanted to clearly show and demonstrate how all students can and will shine when given the authentic opportunity to do so. Additionally, 30% of the students in the class were students with IEPs or individual education plans and or 504 plans. The formative assessment process, as well as the differentiation, is the star of the show here. The differentiation in scaffolding is part of the mechanics of the resource, the Digital Hybrid Socratic Seminar itself. It's not forced and it's not canned. It just provides our students multiple opportunities for students to demonstrate their mastery by engaging in authentic learning, speaking, reading, and writing with their peers. Learners have the opportunity to engage orally, through digital writing, and through other conversational means. This resource honors students' reluctance and very real concerns while also comfortably pushing them to the edge of their own personal comfort zone without overwhelming them. Students have told me multiple times how they appreciated having some control over the demonstration of their learning. It is something that I've held near and dear to my heart while planning instruction ever since. It's honestly a nice sweet spot, bullseye, between engagement and rigor. During the resource you're about to see, every single student has access to academic discussion and sentence starters that are authentic and mimic what a naturally flowing conversation would really look like in real life. The frames that are used help students jump into the conversation. I was assessing their critical thinking skills and not necessarily their language skills. So the frame served as a buoy and assistance for these students. Additionally, the vocabulary that is utilized for this resource, especially the frames, are specifically taken from Tier 2 grade level appropriate vocabulary words that transfer across multiple content areas and disciplines. Students in the inside and the outside circles are having the exact same academic conversations, just in different forms, one orally and one digitally. In order to encourage students in the digital part of the resource to hop in and practice their oral fluency, there are 2 seats left open at all times in the inside circle. This is to cordially invite students to jump into the middle, pose a thought, and enter the conversation for a few minutes without having to stay the entire time and perhaps get overwhelmed. In the time I've used this resource many times, this is one of the pieces that students, especially English learners, have mentioned to me that they have appreciated the most. Being able to participate and be engaged without feeling overwhelmed, but still being able to practice their speaking and listening fluencies. So you are now about to see a video of the resource in action.
Into text.
When you're texting someone, it actually relieves stress. So like if you're having a bad day, texting a friend like can lift your negative mood.
In the TED Talk that we watched a couple weeks ago, it was saying how people use LOL now, they're not even laughing at most things. They just say LOL unnecessarily.
I think texting helps less socially awkward people. Like they might be scared to are nervous to talk to people in real life or maybe even shy. But texting, since you're not face to face, it makes things easier, communication.
There's also on all desks for scaffolding purposes and to assist in the formative assessment process, some sentence starters and some discussion frames that allow the students to engage in a conversation using ways to agree or disagree to an extent, ways of organically inviting students into a conversation. So say someone in the middle circle hasn't been heard from about 5 to 10 minutes, a student has a way to access inviting the student in.
Let's hear from Donovan.
I'd like to hear what Donovan has to say.
Well, I believe it does negatively affect how a person's ability to communicate with others in person because they're just so used to texting them. So I feel like they could say things over text that they don't really mean, which they wouldn't be able to say in person.
While this is also happening, in the back, students are blogging with each other using the same questions in real time and using the same strategies and the same sentence structures. So the students have aliases with this program, and so what they'll do is they'll pose a question and they'll comment off each other using academic language. They'll use the same statistics. They will be able to invite students in that maybe have lain dormant for 5 minutes digitally, but they'll know that. And they're basically doing the exact same rigorous, higher level depth of knowledge work that the Insight Circle is doing traditionally, but in a digital format in the back row. What's so wonderful about this is that it hits so many different elements of the formative assessment process recursively, and they cross over with each other, and puts the onus of production on students. And the teacher is there as a facilitator.
Yeah, I think we should transition to the next question.
Nice.
The resources, okay, I think this is the end of the video. The resources found in Tools for Teachers use cutting edge best practices and pedagogy in order to reach all learners, not just those who get it, quote unquote, the very first time around. There are explicit and embedded language supports, formative assessment strategies, and scaffolds, etc. Each instructional resource comes with language that clearly identifies next instructional steps, as well as things that the teacher could and should consider before, during, and after implementing the instructional resource. Flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. Although the step-by-steps in Tools for Teachers are extremely robust, they are absolutely not a script or a catch-all. There are multiple natural locations for each individual teacher to branch off and make their own individual instructional choices and decisions for their students, because after all, we're the ones in the classroom each and every day. Resources are created by teachers, for teachers, full stop. These are not at all created by a textbook conglomerate, administrations from district offices, etc. These are general education, special education, primary teachers, secondary teachers who come to share and parlay their knowledge into instructional resources that are wholly implementable into the classroom. Every single educator who works with Tools for Teachers also engages in a rigorous onboarding process. During this process, educators learn the quality criteria, the how and the why of the formative assessment cycles, and training on how to provide meaningful and actionable feedback. Each instructional resource that goes into Tools for Teachers undergoes multiple rounds of rigorous instructional reviews before they are ultimately published to the platform. This ensures a culture of intense feedback and accountability. All resource authors are aware and support that these resources are used with flexibility in mind when considering the specific needs of your specific students. Again, I can't say this enough. You know your students better than anyone ever could or dreamed to. Own that and make adaptations and instructional decisions accordingly. I find personally that Tools for Teachers is highly effective in augmenting and supporting my own instructional practice. I really do recommend that each and every one of you engage with it for all your students, but especially for your English learners. I wanted to thank you for your time and allowing me to share my experiences with you today. Again, if you have any questions for me about how I use Tools for Teachers for English learners or otherwise, please do not hesitate to reach out and email me.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That was fantastic. So this is our Bitmoji room. And if you hover on the objects in the room, a link will pop up that will take you directly to the resource. And we also entered all those links into the notes section of that particular slide. And I believe Maggie is going to put the link that takes you directly to that Bitmoji room in the chat, so you can access it there. And I'm going to turn it over to Tyler, who is going to give us some information about the additional webinars in this series.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carla, and Tammy and Matt. Just real briefly before we get to some questions, I wanted to just mention the other webinars coming up in this series. So we've got one in just a couple weeks using interim assessment data and Tools for Teachers to support instruction on October 5th. We've got Making Elementary Science Sizzle with Tools for Teachers on November 9th. Tools for Teachers and other formative assessment resources at your fingertips on January 25th. And A Teacher's Best Kept Secret, Interim Assessments and Tools for Teachers on March 1st of next year, 2022. So several of these you can already register for. They have separate registration, and you can register for any of those on our website on the upcoming training opportunities page on either CAASPP.org or ELPAC.org under the training header. And I think we might be able to put a link directly to that page in the chat soon as well. But with that, we'll jump into a little bit of Q&A. We're getting close to the end of our session here, but we'll try to hit some of the most important questions if we can. So a couple of the ones that I see right off the bat are regarding sort of specific ELD standards. And so I'm hoping that someone might be able to talk just to whether are there resources that are sort of for designated ELD or a way to search for those ELD standards in any way?
Hi, Tyler. I can jump in and talk about the ELD standards. So the Smarter Balance resources are not considered curriculum. They are a supplemental type of resource so that teachers can target and certain specific topics and skills, and they are centered around the mathematics and English language arts standards for the Smarter Balance resources, and then our California resources that are available in kindergarten through 5th grade are centered around the NGSS standards. So it's important to note that the ELD standards amplify and connect with the ELA standards. So when I'm looking at the ELD standards and the framework, I'm looking at how the English language arts standards are being amplified and supported. So you're not going to find a specific curriculum for an ELD specific classroom. However, you are going to find those formative assessment strategies, those accessibility strategies, those ideas for providing interventions for students that need support. And I know when I was a teacher, I had to document the types of interventions that I provided for my English learners. And if I were doing a specific small group intervention activity, that's something that I would log as an activity that I was using with my English language learners. There's also questions I see about how districts are implementing these resources, and it's the interim assessments and the formative assessment resources are totally optional, and teachers can use them on their own. Districts can decide to use interim assessments across a grade level, across school, across district. They're totally optional, and they are to provide you with more ideas about how to get students ready for college and career readiness. So that's something that differs throughout California. Also, I saw a question about how do I know if a lesson is linked to a playlist or with a certain standard? When you go into the lesson along the right side, it talks about the connection playlist. Remember, I said that the connections playlist is the exact title of an interim assessment block. So when I'm in a resource, I can see immediately if it's tied to an interim assessment, which interim assessments it's tied to, and I hope that helps to answer that question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Tammy, for knocking a few out there. I wanted to, before we go, I saw a couple questions that I think Matt might be able to answer, and I wanted to try to prioritize those. So one is just sort of how often do you use tools for teachers? Like, how many of your lessons are really built off of that? Do you use it monthly? Do you use it weekly?
It's that's a fantastic question. So it's like anything, it's definitely part of my instructional system, so to speak. So I definitely use tools for teachers, gosh, at least a couple times every couple weeks. It's just like I mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility. So I might use 80% of a resource, and maybe because of my particular population, tweak it just a tad. But there's that solid foundation. So like there's, I'm very blessed that we have a great baseline of curriculum where I'm at, but we also do have freedom to meet our students where we need to. So it's like a 3 tent poles almost, like with tools for teachers, and then we have a curriculum that we use, and then augmenting with our PLCs with common formative assessments that we come up with that way.
Awesome, thank you. And then the other question I wanted to ask you was, someone asked, what norms do you establish before your Socratic seminar to make it run so smoothly? How do you set it up?
Also a fantastic question. Obviously, routines are key. This wasn't the first. It's not the first Socratic seminar that I try. I start small, especially with students, so that they feel comfortable. That we've got a culture of trust with each other, and it's reciprocal. But we practice and we practice and we practice. It's not the most glamorous answer, but especially now that I'm rounding year 11 or 12 in my teaching career, just definitely setting those high expectations, and just they want to discuss things and they want to be treated like they can access higher level thinking material, because they can. And that's also something that we discuss together. So a lot of the norms are shared and we come up with them together. So if there's shared ownership with that, I find that the accountability runs both ways in that case.
Awesome, thank you so much. And just to provide a reminder, I think that resource and the video, I believe, are in Tools for Teachers for folks to access. So if you're looking for that, you can go and check that out. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're just a few minutes over here, and even though we've still got a few questions, if you have any, burning questions remaining about Tools for Teachers or anything, you can feel free to reach out to CAASPP@cde.ca.gov or ELPAC@cde.ca.gov. And if you have any specific questions about the recording or future registration for future webinars or anything like that, you can email caloutreach@ets.org. And Maggie put those in the chat for you as well if you want to copy those down. But that does bring us to the end of our meeting and the end of our webinar. I really want to thank our presenters, Carla, Tammy, and Matt. Thank you for so much great information. We hope you all learned something. And we hope everyone has a great rest of your day and rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.